Hi everyone, I'm Carlos, and today we're going to be looking at one of the claims made by a lot of flat earthers. And that claim is that the moonlight is actually cold. Now we know that a lot of flat earthers do not believe that the sun and the moon are what they are, and especially that the moonlight is not a reflection of the sunlight. But today we're only going to be focusing on the moonlight experiment and whether it's cold or not. Now this experiment has been performed by flat earthers and non-flat earthers. Flat earthers like Rob Skiba, Nathan Thompson, and D. Marble have actually performed this test, and they have found that the moonlight was cold. But people like Greater Sapien, Sean Hufford, and Toady have actually performed the test as well, and they have found that the moonlight is not cold. In fact, Greater Sapien have found that if you perform this test with or without moonlight, you get the same results. And these results are because of radiative cooling. Now you can look this up and see that because you have things covering other objects that are radiating heat, that other object is also radiating heat, so it won't allow anything under it to radiate that heat as fast as, let's say, something that was not covered up by another object or it was exposed to the sky. Now I went and performed this test on December the 11th of 2019. Now that was the day right before the full moon, but given that the conditions for that day weren't going to be ideal for the test, I went ahead and performed it the day before. But it still had a really good amount of moonlight. Now for my test, I used 4 different materials. I had a rock, I had wood, I have aluminum, and I had also copper. And besides exposing the objects to the moonlight and also putting them in the shadow, I was also going to have a concave mirror. Now this mirror I actually manufactured myself by taking a satellite dish and taking some mylar and gluing it to the parabolic shape of the dish. Now this parabolic dish was going to allow me to magnify all the light into one place so I can magnify the effects of the moonlight, whether there was cooling or warming or none at all. I went and put all of these objects into a styrofoam container that would isolate it from the table, giving me a more controlled experiment. I placed one container on the moonlight and one container on the shadow. I was able to cast a shadow by using a tripod and a piece of cardboard. After 20 minutes of exposing these objects to those conditions, I went and recorded the temperature. I was able to record the temperatures using a thermal camera. By using a thermal camera, I was able to illustrate a lot better what was going on whenever I was trying to take temperature of all these different objects. Now the way a thermal camera works is very similar to a regular video camera, but instead of making a picture out of visible light, we're using the infrared light that is being emitted by these objects. Now starting with the rock and the wood, we did see that there was at least 1 degree of difference in between the ones that were exposed to the moonlight and the ones exposed to the shadow. And yes, it seems that the ones exposed to the moonlight are cold. We know that these are most likely the effects of radiative cooling. Going to the other objects, we can see that the copper was at 36 degrees on the shadow and it was 29 degrees on the moon. Now that's a big difference on temperature, a lot greater than 1 or 2 degrees. And if we look at the aluminum, we get about 39 to 49 on the shade, and on the moonlight it's close to the same. But if we go back to the copper, we can see there's a big difference in between moonlight and the shade. Now why is that? Well, I did take the copper and brought it close to the camera and looked at it and inspected a lot closer, and I did notice that when I started moving the copper, the temperature reading was changing drastically. If I took the aluminum, it seemed to do the same thing. It was very inconsistent. Every time that I moved it, it changed. This is because metal objects that have flat surfaces, not only do they reflect visible light, they also reflect infrared light, which is what we're using to determine the surface temperature of objects. But if they're actually reflecting infrared light coming from other sources, then that means that it's not an accurate reading. Now to demonstrate this, I took 2 sheets of mylar and I laid them on the table. You can see that as I walk in front of them, my temperature or my infrared light is being reflected just like visible light would be. Now if I take something like cardboard and put it in front of it, then you can see that it's reflecting the infrared light that cardboard is emitting. Now I have noticed that a lot of flat earthers perform this test using that digital infrared thermometer, using a lot of metallic surfaces that are flat and reflective. And I think this is why they keep getting those results and making them look like the moonlight is cold, even though what they're actually doing is measuring the reflection of whether it's the sky when it's exposed to the moonlight, or the reflection of whatever is covering that object, which is supposed to be on the moon's shadow. So in conclusion, we know that there's such thing as radiated cooling, and that we can get the same effect if we have moonlight or we have no moonlight, because objects cool a lot quicker when they don't have anything covering them or anything radiating heat on them. And we also know that if you use a digital infrared thermometer with a metallic flat surface, it's very likely you may not be getting the right reading. Now you're probably thinking, hey, what about the concave mirror? Well, I did expose a rock to the concentrated amount of moonlight, and the rock was actually 55 degrees. So compared to the rock that was exposed to the moonlight and the one on the shadow of the moonlight, that's about 4 to 5 degrees difference. So it's actually warmer. I think it's safe to say that the moonlight is not cold. Well, I hope you guys liked this video. Please leave a comment and let me know what you think. And if you like this kind of content, consider subscribing. I will be making more content like this in the future. And thanks for watching.